Hey, it's Drybear. Manor Lords is a brand new simulation strategy game, and although I love this genre, one of the biggest challenges is getting people to play it for the first time because there's so much learning required in how to set up your settlement and be successful. So today I've put together the ultimate beginner's guide to help you get started in the game, get through all of its mechanics, and really dive deep into all of its systems. I'm going to split this video into two different parts because I think there are a very easy learning path for you if you're getting into Manor Lords. When you're making a brand new game, you have options for game styles, difficulties, that sort of thing. I would recommend staying away from the higher difficulties as they are actually very challenging if you don't know what you're doing. And I also recommend if you're just starting out, start with Rise to Prosperity. This will turn off all of the aggressive actions. You won't have to worry about military might or weapons or having militia. You just have to figure out how your town and settlement works and how to grow it properly. And I think you need to have a good basis of knowledge for this before you dive into the warring modes where you have to go to war for territory and build up your militia and replenish them. So the first half of this video, we're going to go through how to build your settlement and how to make it prosperous and successful. And the second half of the video, we'll go into incorporating those things that we've learned into making a thriving warband so you can go around conquering the world. Starting with your settlement development. Right when you get to this screen, when it zooms in, I like to pause it right away just so that I can get used to the area. And there's a couple things you want to make a decision on right away. Firstly, each match or each save that you have for Manor Lords is going to be randomized on the regions. You will spawn somewhere in these regions. These regions will have a random allotment of fertility on the soil, availability of resources around you, and the richness of those resources. Each resource can either be a normal one, which will have nothing on it, or if it's a rich resource, you'll actually see a crown placed on top of it. And this is important because the rich resources are either double the amount or maybe even significantly more, and with your talent increases, you can actually make some of these indefinite, which means that that region is going to be exceptional at dealing with that specific resource, which is the decision making that I talked about earlier. So right when a game begins, I like to determine what I'm going to do with this segment, this town here. So for this example, where I just started a brand new save, I see that I have a rich deposit of stone, I have a rich deposit of berries, which is a good source of food. Then you want to press C to bring up construction, and you want to go and look at your soil fertility. This will tell you what's available if you're going to be farming in this region or not, and you want to click through the different crops that are available. Emmer is going to be your wheat, which allows you to make bread. Flax is useful for making clothing. Barley is good for making beer and ale, and rye is an upgraded version of your wheat for making bread. So you can see right away that this isn't a great region. The one next to me is all green when we look at wheat, but this one has a lot of red zones and yellow zones, which means that the yield for crops is going to be extremely low. So taking manpower and time to develop crops that way is not going to be super useful. So we look at that and we say, okay, I don't really like the fertility of the soil in this region, but we do have a lot of stone and we do have a lot of berries. So this is going to be, berries are going to be a really great source of food for us, possibly even exports, and we'll deal with stone as well. And that's how we'll be making our money at the very beginning. The next thing you want to look at is going to be your approval rating. So at the very top of the screen here, you have all these different numbers that you probably don't know what they mean just yet, but the approval rating is very important because at any point in time, if your approval rating is 50% or below, you will not be increasing your population whatsoever. So your goal will always be to get your approval to 51%. It'll turn green and then keep it above 51% basically at all times, unless you're at war and you have to kind of take an approval hit. Getting to 51% and higher means you'll be growing in population, and you need to be constantly growing in population to make sure that you have the manpower that you need to accomplish your goals. More families, more settlers, more villagers means that you can raise up your industry. You can have more people assigned to different tasks. So you always want to be increasing your approval and maintaining it. So as we go through building this sample settlement, we'll talk about the different ways that you can improve your approval rating. Now, the first thing is that when you make a new settlement, a new area, you will always get a small amount of supplies given to you. And you can choose this when you expand to different regions later on in the game, like mid-game and late game. But when you first start a brand new settlement and you get a brand new one in here, you'll get a allotment of supplies. However, these supplies are not replenishable from the start. So the first thing I do right away is I want to get a logging camp down, because you get a certain amount of lumber or timber, but you don't actually have a way to replenish finish this unless you have a logging camp. So we're going to go construction, and we're going to go under gathering, which allows us to gather resources. We're going to make a logging camp, and I like to put it near resources and trees that are basically not going to be valuable to me. Keep in mind that if there's a wild area where like there's like the wild animals here, if you deforest this, the wild animals will disappear. And if you deforest the area for the berries, it will cause them to grow less frequently and less abundantly. So I like to avoid foresting and logging in those areas, but everywhere else is fine. Generally near mining deposits is where I like to put my logging camps. So I'm gonna put this logging camp right here as close to the tree line as I can without getting rid of trees. And the next thing you want to know is that when you have any connections here, you want to make sure you always have roads being applied. So I like to make sure that there's roads going from the hitching post here to the main road. Every region will have a king's road going through it, and this is how you make trades with other regions and with the like bartering here with the trade points. So you want to make sure that you always have a connection to the king's road, and make sure there's a road connection to everything here. And by the way, this whole time we've been paused, so right now there's no time passing, we're just getting everything set up. So logging camp will allow us to create more timber, and keep in mind that each time we create something, a new building, it requires timber, and that's why the first thing we do is we make a logging camp. The next thing I make right away is going to be a well. This costs you 1 timber, and this is needed for keeping your villagers happy. When you click on the well, you'll see the underground water locations. Just place it kind of near your village on the underground water locations, and you've got that going. The reason I like having this up early is it allows the villagers to interact with it, get water, wash their hands from the very beginning. You won't desperately need it until you have your buildings done, but you want to make sure you have that done right away. Next, I go over to logistics, and I like getting a second hitching post. The reason for this is that for each hitching post, you'll have a certain amount of stable available. The big thing, if we unpause here and watch this, is every major resource needs to be hauled in Manor Lords. And that means that you need to grab an ox, pick up a log, drag the log to the building site or the area that needs to use it, and they need to bring it there manually. So the first thing I like doing is I like putting down a second hitching post, and I like getting a second ox. And this allows you to basically, anytime you're building something, the ox will need to be involved. If you're bringing it to a location that uses logs, you will need to have an ox. So having an ox there really helps, and getting a second hitching post and then buying another ox means you have 2 ox available, which is super crucial for getting everything done. Now we've got the well, we've got 2 hitching posts that's about to be done, and we're building a logging camp so we can get more timber. And with the timber we have left, the next thing I like doing is getting 5 burgage plots. At the top of the screen here, you'll see the requirements for leveling up your settlement, and this is going to be basically increasing your availability for housing and also leveling it up and giving more higher level burgage plots as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the residential section, and we're going to make 5 burgage plots level 1. I like giving these a little bit extra room because it makes it a lot easier to utilize them. So I like making roads. Roads are free, by the way, in the current build, so you don't have to worry about these being too like crazy or whatever. So I like getting kind of like a nice long square area. So what's great about the burgage plots is you have a lot of different choices you can make on how you use them. So for example, you can make this any shape you want. You can make like this little baby one here, which it says is too small to make into a home. You can also make it massive, by the way, and put 1 home on it, any size here. The recommendation I give for you though, if you're just starting out, is that you want to make sure that you make the burgage plots big enough so that they have this second section here. So for example, if I take the burgage plots and I make it just big enough to make a house, it needs to be a little bit bigger, you'll see that sometimes it won't have this, it doesn't have that second thing here. So you can see that this plot, the way it is shaped here and the size that it is, I can actually add in additional housing. So this icon on the right says that this will make it room for 1 family. And then if it has extra room in the housing section, you can add a second home, which means that you can increase your housing for that by 1. However, what we want is we want actually a backyard or a front yard for the home. So if I make the home really long here, and I rotate this here, you'll notice that if it's long enough, I can actually get it to have this little portion here. So you see that there's room for a home, there's room for a second home. So if I wanted 2 families to live here, I could. And it's long enough that there's actually a little hammer and shield here, a shed. This shed area allows these people that live here to be craftsmen or artisans, and that's super important for later on. You want to make sure you have most of your homes have that availability. So I'm actually going to go here and then build it like this. You can see that if I build it this way, they actually have enough room to have extra bits there. So this will be, these two can have their homes, and then we can have two craftsmen as part of that as well, which is super crucial because it means that we can turn them into craftsmen for making our village stronger and stronger, or we can even turn them into farmers and make them farm crops as well. Now that the logging camp is done, I'm going to put at least one family here. When you have the location for these, you want to add or remove families. You basically at the beginning want to be assigning your families as much as possible to areas that are the biggest growth. Since we're about to be making a bunch of buildings, our biggest need right now is for timber. And so we're gonna make sure that we have one family on the logging camp. We start with just a little bit of regional wealth money. When this hitching post is done, we want to add another ox. And what this does, it gives us another livestock that can be doing this. And you have the option of assigning livestock to specific buildings, which means that they can focus entirely on that one task. And since when you're chopping down trees, it becomes a log and logs need to be hauled by an ox, I love putting my second ox here on full duty so that as they're chopping trees, you can just keep pulling them in and we get more and more timber, which allows us to create more opportunities. Periodically, you'll want to speed up time. You have normal speed, 4 times speed, and 12 times speed in the bottom right here. And you'll use this to kind of skip along. This is super useful because sometimes you're just waiting for things to get done or waiting for villagers to work on things. And then you'll be waiting for resources to show up so you can speed it up just to get things that you need. Now that we farmed up 8 timber for 4 burgage plots, I'm going to put these down here. And you want to make sure that these have good room for housing, and at least as many of them as possible have yards that can be used for crafting. So we're going to do that. So now we know these 2 can be upgraded into artisans at some point, and we need 5 total for the first upgrade. And we also want to get rid of this homelessness tag here, which means that everyone here doesn't have a house to live in. So this is lowering your approval rating. We're now at 47%, which means that we're not adding anyone to the village. We're not getting anything added. So we need to make sure that we solve that as fast as possible. So we're getting 4 homes here. And since we don't really have good fertility, all we have is this berry plot, which is kind of far away. I'm actually going to go ahead and create a farm for this specific save. And the reason I do that is just because we're so limited on resources for food that I like getting one early. So one thing to keep in mind is that the size of the home makes a difference in what it can do and how well it can do it. So if I'm gonna make a farm home, I'm gonna make it way bigger. So you can see right here, the area for yard is much larger because I know that this burgage plot is gonna be a farm. So I'm gonna drop that down here. And when this is done, I'm gonna turn it into a vegetable farm, which costs 15 regional wealth, which means that I can start collecting vegetables and getting food for my villagers. And that also counts as my 5th home for this requirement. The other thing to keep in mind is that you have unassigned and assigned families, and that's what we did earlier when we assigned these people to the logging camp. You want to have at least 1 or 2 unassigned families basically at all times, because the unassigned families are the ones that build. They're the ones that do construction. They're the ones that guide the ox from place to place. They're the ones that do all the unassigned tasks. So not having, it's like if I went and assigned all my workers and I had none left, no construction would get done. So you want to make sure you have basically 1 or 2 families always unassigned so that they can do general things around the camp. All the other ones focus on their task. But right now we're just kind of building up the timber. You can see that the building materials required have to be hauled over by an ox. So an ox is going to grab the logs, bring them over, place them on the building. Any unassigned families that are nearby are going to come and build this once the resources are placed on top. But we're going to hit it on 12 times just to watch this progress. All right, this plot just finished, so now we're going to go here. And when we look at this, because we had that extra house for a room, we have the ability to expand the living space here. For 2 timber, we can add another home here, which gives us even more increase for families. But this is what we're looking for. If the house has a yard, which means that they had that little hammer space, that shed space that we saw when we're putting it down, you'll get this option on the burgage plot, which allows you to expand this home into a functional artisan house. They can do things like grow apples. They can raise goats, which gives you hides. You can get eggs, you can get vegetables, and later on you can craft things like bows and whatever. So a lot of your artisans and craftsmen are actually the people that just live in the village and they convert their home into a functional space. But because we don't have a lot of great food options, we're going to go ahead and turn this into a vegetable garden. And you can see that since we have a big yard, the entire yard gets converted into a vegetable garden, and the larger the garden, the larger the yield. So we want a bigger area here. And just for good measure, I'm actually going to put another burgage plot here about the same size, and we're going to convert this one into a garden as well. So when you have this here, you can increase or decrease the segmentation. So for how many burgage plots you want and how big you want them to be. So I'm gonna make it the only one, which makes it super big. And then we're gonna place this down and we'll turn this one into a vegetable garden as well. And that will be all of our current wealth, which means if we want more money, we're gonna have to earn it to use it on other things. You can see that people that live here in this home are already going to work putting the farm. It's gonna take a while for these vegetables to become harvested, but once they are, it's another food source for us, and it's indefinite. It keeps going forever and ever. So this house will always serve as a source for vegetables, so we can just keep feeding and fueling the settlement and help it grow. So now we're at a point that we really need to start considering what we're going to do next. So if I pause the game, you can see that we have a good source of timber. We're letting that come in, which is super good. And we've kind of set up homing and housing for people, so we'll lose this homelessness bonus. And once we have this homelessness thing gone and we get one or more benefit to the villagers, we'll break 50% approval. And as long as there's room, new villagers will start settling and we'll get more and more manpower to set up our village. However, our starting supplies are starting to run low. Usually it takes about a month in game. If you start in the spring at March and it goes into April or May, this is when you really need to make sure you've set up for good food and home and fuel to keep your villagers warm in the winter. So we're about to run out of bread here. Now we need to figure out what we're going to do for food. We have vegetables growing. We'll have another vegetable plot here, but we need to start thinking about other food sources. Our closest one is going to be wild animals here. You can set hunters to hunt these, get hides and meat, and then they can put meat on the marketplace and use that as an option. So we're gonna go with the closest resource, which is gonna be wild animals. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a road, which gets us kind of close over there without destroying any trees. And then we want to build on the gathering side. We're gonna go over here to a hunting camp and put it kind of close to the hunting area. Keep in mind that the wild animals will migrate around and move, so you want to make sure that they always have a forested area to stay covered under and that they move around and you can get that hunting. But now we're going to go ahead and get that done. And as our 5th house is done, we now unlock the higher upgrade of the settlement, which is for the small village, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. The hunting camp is done, so we're going to put at least one family on it as well. You can see in the top left, we're still above 1 for unassigned, so we're still good there. We're going to put them on here, and what they're going to do is they're going to basically just kind of chill here, run over, hunt animals that are just walking around in the woods here, like the deer, find a kill, bring it back, and then they'll have a carcass that they process. They'll get meat and hides, and that'll give us a source of food. And you can see that we're kind of running low on food, which is super bad. We want to make sure we stay on top of that, but we use the starting supplies that we got to get us to this point. Now we also need fuel. The easiest way to get that is going to be here with the woodcutter's lodge. Again, it needs to be near trees so they can chop it down, so that can actually get some wood there. So we're going to put it kind of near this, put that down here, and we'll put another family on that, and that gives us our food and it gives us our fuel to keep our homes warm for the upcoming winter. Next, let's talk about the villagers and their happiness here. So as you can see, when these two, remember these two had a yard and these two did not. When I click on these, I can't do anything with the yard. I can't add any extensions to these homes, but these were just big enough to get a yard. So now we can do the backyard extension for these and add other functionality to these homes. It's fine to have the smaller homes if you're just adding population, but you do want a lot of these burgage plots that have room for bonus. So that's the big thing you want to look at there. But when you click on the home, you can see that all of these options here are what the home needs to be happy. If you fill more of these diamonds, it means that the people that live there are happier. It'll raise your approval rating. You'll be able to add more people to the village and grow it over time, which is super useful, super good. So we need water access. We did that right away in the very beginning by adding the well. So as long as you have one well in the area, you'll be able to add this here. Next, everyone wants a church so they can practice their faith. And then you want a fuel stall supply, which we're working on right now with the woodcutter's lodge. This will be firewood for us. Then we want to get food stall. And remember that the more variety of food, the happier people will be. So if all you have is berries to eat, they'll get kind of bored of that. But if you have berries and meat and eggs and honey, then things get more interesting for them. They're happier. And then you also want to get clothing, which we'll talk about in just a second. But now that we've got people, there's a carcass here, they're going to start working on this and popping this in. Then this is going to be processed. And then the first thing that they're going to do as soon as they have a product is going to say, hey, we want to have a marketplace so we can sell our product and make it available to the rest of the village. And for that, you just need to make a marketplace, which luckily doesn't cost anything. It doesn't need to be very big. So I like going roads, and I'll make kind of like this big here, just generally near like the center area. Go to construction, residential, and you have marketplace, no construction cost. So I'm just going to make it this big, and you can see this makes 12 stalls. You don't really need that many for a long time in the game. 12 is plenty. So I like putting that there. So once they have this carcass that's transitionary, once they process this into meat and hide, they're going to make a product. They're going to come over here and set up a stall, and that's the stall that these homes are looking for. They want a firewood or charcoal stall, they want food stalls, and they want clothing stalls that they can leave their home, go to the marketplace, pick up the items that they need to live, and they'll be happier, and it'll raise your approval rating. And just for good measure, we'll turn this second area into a vegetable garden as well, and you can see how big the garden is because of the plot being bigger than the ones we had built over here. And the next thing is that you want to make sure you have enough room for people to move into your village once you have 51% approval rating or higher. And you'll see that with this living space here. Since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 burgage plots that have 1 home each, we have 6 living space, and we have currently 5 families living in our village. So since we have 1 extra spot, if we had high approval rating, then the extra space that doesn't have a family in it would get a family on it as well. And since these plots are big enough, remember that second home that appeared on the plot size, we'll be able to spend 2 timber to add an extra home, which gives us even more living space. And I'm going to go ahead and do that on those just to make sure we have the extra room. And you want to have a lot of extra living space so that when you get the approval rating, things start to fill in with extra families as you go. And here you go. The hunting lodge has set up their food stall. They're going to be moving over meat from the hunting camp that they collect from hunting over into this food stall. Once food appears in the food stall, then it'll become available to these residents. And it's based on distance. So the homes that are closer to the stall will get first access to the resource. If there's only enough meat for say 3 homes, then the 3 homes that are closest will have access to that, and the homes that are further away won't gain access to it. And so you want to make sure that there's enough resources available for everyone to be happy in your village so that you can raise that approval rating. Now the woodcutter's lodge is done. They're going to start creating firewood, and that's your 2 main resources, food and fuel. They need to be able to burn that. Remember that by the time you reach winter, it's still spring right now, you will consume twice the amount of food and twice the amount of fuel while you're getting through the cold months. So you want to stockpile up on those as best you can. So that covers fuel stall supply and food stall supply. The last one is clothing. And the easiest way to get this is to provide leather to the marketplace early on. This will give you a nice boost in approval, which gets us over the 50% requirement, and you'll get that from hide. So what I like to do at the very beginning of the game, once we've done the 5 burgage plots, we figured out our main resource, we've got the logging camp bringing timber in regularly, then I like to go ahead and add in a industry on the building, and then over here to tannery right next to the hunting camp. And when you do this, you can put a family on the tannery, or even just have the hunting camp family bounce back and forth between the two. As long as you have hides on hand, you can bring them over to the tannery, convert that into leather, and then they can set up a stall here, which gives you clothing, which gives you a nice, easy approval rating bump in the beginning of the game to keep that going. Now, if you don't have a lot of hunting available, you can try to get yarn from sheep, but it's going to be a little bit slower, or you can get linen from flax, which requires you to plant, and it's very hard to get flax right at the beginning of the game. It's going to take you at least half a year, if not a year and a half, to get some flax and then turn that into linen to make that available. So the easiest way is to get hide. Now, if you don't have a available wild animal resource nearby, one of the other easiest ways to do it is to just go here and get goats. These will basically provide 2 hides every 6 months or so in the game around that, and then you'll be able to convert those hides into leather, and it gives you that boost. So you might want to make a bunch of houses that are level 1 and get them all big enough to get goats there. It does cost some money, so you want to have some income by the time you do this, but if you don't have any way to get clothing, it is a nice way to get that approval rating busted up. So now we've got a firewood stall, we've got a food stall, and once these are cleaned up, you can see these are start to fill. And when you go to the marketplace, you can also hover over over the requirements, and it'll show you where you're covering these. You can see that the meat that we have available is covering 3 homes right now. We don't have anything in the firewood stall yet. They haven't brought over the materials, so nothing's being covered, and that's not being there. And we have no clothing stalls either. Now, the last thing for level 1 is going to be the church level. So you want to get a church built. So if we go to construction and we go to residential, we'll see at the very end, a wooden church is here. However, it requires 5 timber, 20 wood planks, and 10 stone to get started. And this is going to be a great way to get approval rating in the beginning. Once the church is done, we'll be basically 55 to 60% approval with everything coming online. So then we'll be able to start growing our village from that point. However, we need wood planks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to gathering. We're going to place down a saw pit right next to the logging camp. And that will be able to bring these logs here from the logging camp over to the saw pit and convert it into wood planks. And you want to make sure that you're converting at least enough to get 20 wood planks. It takes one log creates 5 wood planks right now in the current build, which means you'll need to bring over 4 logs to get the 20 planks required to build your church. You can see that these farming families are getting to work, putting the veggies down into the garden. It's going to be a while before these harvest, but it will help out a bunch, trust me. And the veggies are super resilient too. They won't die out in the winter, so you'll be able to make through that. So we're kind of investing in this for later once our current food supply, like once we can't hunt anymore because we've hunted all the animals and we've eaten up all of our bread and there's not a lot of options, then our veggies will come online and we'll be able to bridge that gap throughout the year. Everything is about maintaining seasonal availability and what you have next to your village that you can use to the best effect. And when it comes to hunting, you do want to kind of make sure you pay attention to the hunting limit. You don't want the herd to go to 0 so you lose it completely. I generally like to keep it between 8 and 10, so which means they'll hunt until the available animals in this herd gets down to the number you specify. Once that gets to that number, it'll stop hunting until they, create more deer, they have babies and start spreading. That's what you want to make sure you have available. I like setting it to around 8 to 10 and then you leave it alone. So once that gets to 8 to 10, I actually will just pull these hunters off of this hunting camp and put them on the tannery to convert all the hides they've collected into leather. And once they do that, they'll add it to the stall, which will give you more approval because then the clothing stall will become available. Now that we have a good source of timber already, I usually have 2 here on the logging camp in the beginning because we have so many buildings to build. I'll take 1 off the logging camp, put them on the saw pit so that they can take these logs over here and convert them into wood planks so we can make our church. You see in the hunting camp right now, we have too many hides. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take them off, take the family off the hunting camp, put them on the tannery real quick. They're going to grab the hides from the next door, bring them over, convert that into leather. Then they're going to set up a clothing stall, which has the leather in it, and it'll give you a whole bunch of approval rating because you then finally have the clothing stall. And once they've processed all the hides, then I like to take them off of the tannery, put them back on the hunting camp, and make sure that they're kind of continually getting meat and all that. And you just want to send them back and forth. You don't want people just sitting idle and doing nothing. So if there's nothing they can do at that station, you can just move them between stations to keep things fresh. Now we have 20 planks or more, which means we can go to construction, go to residential, and then we're going to go to our church, and we want to build our church. And I kind of put it in the center of town usually just to keep things moving. I want to put a road here just because I like things to be connected. So I'm going to put this over on that camp there, and then we will put the church right here. Put that down, and then that will give us a big boost of approval rating. Even without the church, as soon as the clothing stall came online, you can see that we're over 50%, which means that we're going to start getting new families showing up into our village that we can use and put to work. You want to keep an eye on the supplies icon, which is this barrel here at top middle screen. Hover over this and look at this as often as possible. It tells you how many months you have available for food and for fuel. So right now we're basically exclusively living off of the meat that we've hunted, which will start to slow down as those deer, start to be hunted and run out. So we need another source of food soon. You can see that our veggies are making progress, but we will need to find another area that we can take advantage of. And then also for fuel, we want to make sure we have a good enough amount of fuel. And remember, once it reaches the winter months, it'll double consumption on the fuel. So you want to make sure you have a lot of extra stores available for that. Then once all the hides are pulled out of the hunting camp storage and everything's good, I pull them off the tannery, put them back on the hunting camp, which gave time for the animals to regrow, come back, procreate and create more, and then you'll kind of bounce them back and forth. And as your village gets really big, eventually it'll be so large that you'll want to have 1 on each just to make sure that's always working. It'll be a little less efficient, but you're going to have so much to manage at that point that you don't really care. And boom, the church is finally done. You don't need to have any families manned here unless villagers die, because then you'll be able to have someone here that can bury them in the official graveyard that's sanctioned so that they're happy. If it's just random thugs that you kill off later on, then you can put it in a corpse pit, but that's all you need for the church there. But you can see that our approval ratings are now going to start shooting up because we have all of these filled out. And now once we get one more kind of food that we can use besides meat, we'll be able to start upgrading to level 2. Now let's pause the game and look at our food options available here. These are the kinds of food that you can have in the game right now. Meat, vegetables, berries, bread, eggs, apples, and honey. The apples and honey are only available through the talent tree, so if you haven't talented into them, you won't be able to get apples and honey unless you buy them off the market, and the others are available there. Meat comes from hunting, so you'll be able to get meat that way. The vegetables are grown here on the homes only. If you go construction and then to farming, you actually won't be able to get, you can't grow vegetables on a farm. They have to be on an actual home garden in order to get that there. And if you're looking for bread, you actually have to make a farm, make a farmhouse, grow wheat, harvest it in September. Then you have to make a windmill to convert the wheat into grain into flour, and then use the flour to make bread. So usually bread is more of an involved process that you look at for later on in the game. But if you remember, we talked about there being a very powerful, rich deposit of berries here on the far side. Now, the reason I didn't go for it right away is because it's so far away. I mean, it's not too far. It's just, it's going to take a while for an ox to grab a log and move all the way over here to make a forager hut. But we're going to do that now because we have a rich deposit. So let's go ahead and make we'll unpause the game and let's go to the gathering, and we're going to make a forager hut because that will allow us to gather the berries. The big thing about the berries is that they can't be harvested in the winter. So we're about to hit winter months. We're gonna grab as many berries as we can off this deposit, and we want to make sure that we set high priority for this. But that will give us our second kind of food, and we're gonna get a bunch of food. Now, because we looked at the soil for this land, it's pretty bad. Like, we're not gonna be able to grow things here. We also don't have a rich deposit for meat, and we don't have a crazy amount of options here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and spend our first talent point. Keep in mind that these talents here, these development points, are for each individual region. So you'll be spending the talent points for this region. When you expand, you can make this region different. You can make this region different. So for example, if we go here, remember this region was super green and lush. We would go and we would spend a lot of their points in the farming section to get extra value out of that because they're so good at it. But because we're here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend my first point on forest management, doubles capacity of all berry deposits. When I do that, it turned this from 128 to 256, which means that every year we can harvest a metric boatload of berries, which give us a constant supply of that for going forward. We speed things up. The ox is going to walk the log all the way out here to make this forager hut. Once this is done, we're going to put someone on it and they'll start collecting berries, and they'll have to work their berries back. And we'll kind of bridge this. We'll make kind of a settlement area here and here, and we'll connect them together, and we'll grab this iron as well as we go along. But now that the forager hut is done, let's pop someone in there. They're going to start gathering those berries before winter hits and we won't be able to. And we have a bunch of them in there, which is super good. So if we come back to our main area, the veggies are ready to be grabbed here shortly. Maybe in like a month or two, maybe in September, we'll be able to grab these and start putting them away, which gives us 3 different types of food, which means that we're going to have a lot of options for that. In the top left, you can see that we have 8 living spaces and 6 families. So these two put together, we have 6 families, which means that we have room to add 2 more. I like adding more homes just to make sure that we have enough to keep up with that demand. I don't really care about these trees as much. I want to make this kind of big because I actually do want some more craftsmen to be added to the mix for this village here so they can start working on creating things that we need. So I'm going to go residential. We have plenty of timber. So I'm going to go and I'm create a whole bunch of homes with nice sized yards for this section. So we're going to go here, rotate, and I'm going to put the houses on this side. This will be 7 more plots. We put that down, and then that'll add a whole bunch of more space. So now we have good approval rating. We have the church. Everyone's got a home. We've got food coming in. We have clothing. We have firewood for the winter. Things are looking good. Now we want to add more homes. We can start adding more people so we can start getting more things done. We check back in here, we can see that the animals are pretty heavily harvested, so we're going to pull off the hunters here that are processing the corpses and get them to make some more leather for the market. Remember, if you're playing on an aggressive mode, bandits will be stealing your supplies regularly. So even we're playing on the baby, like the simple mode right now, which should make things simpler, but you do want to kind of keep an eye on your resources for that. And after some time has passed, they've made their way over to a food stall to put some berries in it. So now we have 2 or 3 kinds of food. 3 once these vegetables get harvested and put down, so they're kind of start building that. And it's nice because these were built at different times, that these are going to be off season, so these are going to get harvested while these are growing, and then they'll alternate back and forth. But that gives us a nice food variety for that. We have plenty of fuel, we have clothing because of the leather we're making, so everything's looking good. Our approval is rising, we're feeling good. We even now have a bunch, like 3 more families have joined, which give us more people that can work on building homes or collecting materials or crafting things. Now I would say in this playthrough, we're pretty well set for winter. We have about 7 months of food and 8 months of fuel. It's October, so we're about to go into winter. We should be just fine. We'll make it through the winter fine. So our next big problem that we want to tackle is going to be the fact that we have no money. Our village has 0 regional wealth. We have no money. We can't do anything with that. So the next thing you want to look at for your village is how to make money. Like, what industry are you going to be good at? We do have a rich deposit of stone, which we can export here, or we can use all of these trees here and export the value out of that. Tannery is all done with the leather, so I'm going to take one out, put it back over into the hunting camp so they can get more. We even got a new family joining, and this is the big thing that I learned very early on. It took me many attempts to figure this out, but you can see that even, like, we're still in year 1, but I have 9 families working for me now, and we're about to add a whole bunch more, and this is huge. And my first few attempts at this game when I was learning it, I didn't get this process right, which means that I was stuck at 5 or 6 families for very long periods of time, and the extra manpower makes a huge difference in being able to accomplish anything. So the process that we've walked through so far is my recommended process for getting your settlement off the ground in the first year so you can get things moving. Now, to make money, you're going to need a trade post. So you need to make sure you make a trading post. It's for timber. The big thing is it follows the King's Road for the merchants. So the merchants will take these double-laned roads in and out of your territory to trade. So I like making sure that it's near one of those as best as possible, or even on it as well. So I'm going to actually put the trading post right here on the King's Road. So as the traveling merchants come through, they can stop at my trading post and then trade and then head out. So we'll let this get finished and completed, and then we'll talk about trade. All right, the trading post is complete. Let's talk about trade because it's super crucial to getting yourself set up. Firstly, in order for trade to happen at all, a family needs to be assigned to the trading post, and they will move things that are in and out to that. But when you go to the trade tab, you have all these different categories and you'll be able to set up how to do this. And initially, you may not know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, but you want to make sure that you have a good industry that can generate money for you that you can trade. This is also how you get resources that don't exist in your region, or you may not have an easy way to access them, including, weapons and armor, or even food that might be outside your region. Maybe you want to import food or buy food from a region that has good farm land, good fertile land that they can use to farm crops. So we're going to go ahead and go here, and we want to make sure we make a little bit of money. Now, the easiest way to do this is sell excess resources that you may have. So if you have a lot of stone, you can export the stone. If you have a lot of timber that you convert into wood planks, you can very easily do that. So I'm actually going to go ahead, because we have a good area of stone, let's go ahead and make a mining pit. So there's 2 different kinds. There's a stone cutter camp that you use for stone, and then for iron and for clay, you'll need a mining pit. So we're going to make a stone cutter camp. It doesn't matter where you put this as long as it's kind of near. It's not like the other resources that are there. And generally, you want to make sure that there's enough roads connected to it. So we're going to press R. We're going to make a road over to the camp. And I'm also going to connect it to my main area here, just so, as people are moving back and forth, we're good to go. So we're going to let this finish, and then we'll start collecting stone and we can sell it off. Now you can see that snow has started to fall, and because of that we've hit winter, and now the berries are 0 out of 256. And for that reason, until we get an herb garden, I'm going to remove this person or this family from the storage on the berries. So they're going to be stuck here. There's no reason to, you can't farm any berries or collect any berries in the winter. So we're going to pull that off so that kind of frees up an extra family for helping. And you can see that we're still getting more families joining. We're at 15, we have 11, so we probably want to go ahead and add more homes. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, we want them to be long enough so that they can have yards so they can be useful later. So I'm just going to go ahead and set it up like this. This will add 8 more with the timber that we have, and we'll have even more homes. You can see that even like it's still the first year and we have 11 families already aligned. We can put a bunch of people to work and make things function. The stonecutter camp has finished building, so I'm going to put 2 families on this and we're going to start collecting stone. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to put a family here on the trading post, and I'm going to go ahead and start selling stone because I only need a stone to make a manor at that point. So we're going to go ahead and you can see these options here. So there's 2 different kinds of things that you can trade inside of the trading post. You can export and import or full trade, but you can see that these are available for trade now, and these require a route. What this is that you can buy a route for some amount of funds here. On this, you can actually establish a route. It costs money, but once you do that, a regular traveling merchant will travel to your trading post regularly on a schedule to buy and sell whatever this resource is. Some resources don't require it at the jump, and some valuable things like all of these, you can see it says route required, so you need to buy a route in order to start selling or buying these. But so we're going to start with something simple. You can see we already have a bunch of stone because we have a rich resource. I'm going to hit this to export, and then you want to basically set a surplus on what, like, don't go lower than this value. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 20 so we have a little bit of stone on hand so that we can actually build buildings that need stone. There's not too many of them, but it's a good resource to get rid of, and we have a bunch of stone here. So this will periodically, as merchants come by and there's someone staffed on hand, they'll be able to sell whatever you're trying to sell. We'll sell each one for 1 gold, but we have a whole bunch of stone to sell. We'll be able to start making money that way. Now that we've got homes coming in, we have 14 families here coming on with more living space coming on as well. We've got a source of income. You can see we're already making money from that, so it's going to keep going. We'll leave 2 families here to keep collecting stone that we can sell on the marketplace with the traders. So this is going to keep going up and up, and we need this regional wealth for a lot of expansions later. We've got food for the winter. We have fuel coming in as well. We're waiting for the berries to come back when the winter is over, which you can see the snow is already starting to melt because we're on 12 times speed right now. The next thing that we want to focus on now that we're feeling pretty stable is we want to start leveling up our settlement level. So now that we're a small village, we want to go to a large village. And to do that, you just hover over the region name at the top of the screen, and this will tell you what you need to do. So now we have 5 level 1 burgage plots. We need 2 level 2 or higher burgage plots to go that. So I'm going to do exactly that. So let's take these bigger ones over here that have big yard. And since they're further away, the food stall is not going to be as good. So you can say these are all filled up. Now we can spend timber to upgrade this to level 2, which means that it will have higher requirements. The families that live here have more requirements for what they want. Like these will get more complicated, but you'll be able to get 1 regional wealth per month for each family on that property. And once you have 2 of them, then you can start moving into the higher tiers of your settlement, which is what we want. So we're going to go ahead and upgrade that to level 2. And then when we get enough of the resources here available, we'll be able to upgrade these ones that are next to it as well. You need to have all of these requirements filled in order to upgrade to the next level. And our vegetables are finally ready. So look at where we're at right now. So we have a bunch of this resource here, a bunch of stone that we're going to sell. Food-wise, the meat has ran out because we basically hunted this down to our minimum requirement so they won't kill off the herd. We're waiting for the berries to regrow because winter is ending. These should start coming back, but we have a super deposit here for that. But now we're kind of low on food. Like we just don't have a lot of options for food. And right when that need happens, look at this. Now we have vegetables that are being harvested. All of these vegetables are going to start being pulled up and put into the food stalls. We're going to get a bunch of this extra stuff, cabbage, carrots, that sort of thing. So you want to plan out your season so that you have a good variety of food available. Once that's done, we'll be able to move these over into level 2 and will be available for the next part. The berries have started regrowing because spring is almost upon us. So we're going to reassign a family here to the berry area. They'll be able to set up the stall and get more berries there. And this will be, we'll get hundreds of berries from this for the whole season, which means that we're going to get huge value, which is why we got this forest management note here at the very beginning. And once we have that, we'll be able to start upgrading these. Now that we've got we have 17 families, we're still building up tons. And like I said, we're at the start of year 2. When you're first starting out, you'll still have like so few. It's so important to keep this population growing. So now that we're kind of at that point, I don't want to keep toggling these back and forth. I'm going to put 1 family on the tannery, 1 family on the hunting camp, and then leave 1 on the woodcutters. And that way those will just constantly come in. They'll start to be a little inefficient at times, but that way I don't have to keep an eye on it like constantly while I'm working on other things, now that our settlement is growing. You can see since we've been mining a huge deposit of stone, we have hundreds of stone to sell, and we've left this on its own to farm. We have made 100 regional wealth, 104 passively while we're working on other stuff. So that gives us our money, which we can use now for tons of things. Now that we have so many different kinds of harvesting things and things that we can use, we want to start setting up storage areas. This simplifies the process of us using those. I like putting a storehouse right next to the trading, because what happens is when the traders need something to trade, they will go to the storehouse, collect it, and put it in the trading post. So I like putting these next to each other so that we can have it there. And the next thing we want is the storehouse will be used for building materials and crafting items, and the granary is used for food items. So I like having both of these. So I'll usually put this here so that people can use it. And this will just be a nice intermediary for all, like you can put meat, any kind of food item that you have, you can put it in the granary. So all of these can go in the granary, and all of these construction materials can go into the storehouse. All of your military items, your crafting materials, all of those can go into the storehouse. So you want to have these here as a central storage area, and then you want to assign families to them so that you can keep things up to date. And it's super useful when you have these people that are way out in the boonies. This is actually going a little slow on the harvesting. So I'm going to go ahead and add another person here, start pulling that. But then basically what you can do is when these are done, the storehouses and the granary can sell items on the marketplace. So even though these berry people, the berry farmers, are way out here in the boonies, you can have them come and drop their items off at the granary, and then the family that's managing the granary can go to the market, which is right here, and sell them. And that way you don't have to worry about these guys managing a stall all on their own when they're focusing on just getting berries. And since we're here and we have the money, let's go ahead and add an herb garden. This will give us something to do in the off season and give us another product that we can sell as well. Storehouse is done. Let's assign a family to it. And while there's a family assigned, they will just go around the village and grab storage of items that fit. So they'll go to the saw pit and they'll grab all these extra wood planks, and they'll go to the the tannery and grab the leather, and they'll grab the extra items in the places like firewood and stuff like that, and they'll come store in the storage house, and then they can sell things. You can see he already built a stall. So let's upgrade this to a large storehouse since we have so many things going on now. And then the granary will be done. Let's assign a family to the granary as well, and let's upgrade that storage as well. So these two will both be as intermediaries for items that are in excess, so they don't sit out in the rain and get spoiled. The food stall just got constructed, so we have an extra food stall here, and they're going to start moving over. You can see these veggies are coming in again. They'll be able to move all these over and get that done, but it's a little bit less food progress than I want. So what we can do is we can start importing other foods from the trading house. We can go over here to food. The cheapest ones, I like getting eggs right off the bat, because unless you get a chicken coop, like if you upgrade this to a chicken coop in the beginning, you can get eggs. But if you don't do that, it's nice to just get a different kind of food item for your village. So let's go ahead and just start importing eggs, and let's just have a storage of like 10 maybe. Let's not overspend on them, but just get a little bit of eggs here just to keep the food storage going. And it's time to expand again. We've got one more living space option. We have 23 living space and 22 families. Let's go ahead and get even more buildings so we can add more people. And again, we do want to kind of, actually for this, I'm going to leave, since they don't have a yard, let's just make a whole bunch of homes that are just small and easy to fill. By the way, when you're upgrading to level 2, I generally always try to do the homes that actually have a yard, because when they get to level 2 and level 3, it gains access to better options for being able to do, like they can start making things. So you want to make sure they have a yard so you can take advantage of that. You see this requires level 2 on the burgage plot for them to start being blacksmiths or cobblers or fletchers. So I don't recommend taking these ones that don't have a yard and upgrading them to level 2, because it doesn't really benefit you until later on when you just want the income. Now that we've got a good steady flow of food coming in, I'm going to cancel this import so we're not wasting money on the eggs. We have the berries flowing in from our big berry farm up here. Look how much this grows, by the way. We have 2 families on cycle constantly harvesting, and it's growing. This is because it's a rich deposit that we have doubled with forest management, and this gives us a constant supply of berries, which is super good. And it's all about managing what you have available in your starting plot. We've gotten to a point as well where we need more oxes to move things around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand both of these to small stables, and then I'm going to go over here to logistics, and I'm going to get another hitching post, and I'll upgrade that one as well. Then what we'll do is we'll get 2 more ox. So you can see up here in our stable, we want slots for all of our animals. If you have too many animals for the stable space or pasture space, they'll run away over time. So you don't want that to happen. So now that we have that, let's get another ox, and then we'll wait 30 days for the guy to come back. He'll drop that ox off, and then we'll get another ox, and then I'll add in a horse for the trading post, which means that they can ride over to areas to get items that they need for selling. You can see how much of an investment the two farms were. We're getting regular flows of carrot and cabbage over and over and over. So we're constantly getting these filling up. So in the food supply, we have berries and vegetables as our two main sources of food. And they're so plentiful that we're able to rely on that when the meat runs dry, right? When this gets over harvested and we're waiting for animals to procreate to make more, this plus the berries is keeping us alive. Now that we've upgraded more of these to level 2, we've unlocked another point that we can spend, and we'll even hit a next level after. And this is where things get kind of interesting, because we know that we are kind of like berry focused and harvesting focused, but there are some really important nodes that you want to look at. The trade logistics node is one of my favorites. What that does is that when you go to these and you go to establish a trade route, you can see how this is like 144 to sell plate armor. This one's like 36, and these go up over time. However, with this node here, the trade logistics, it caps the value of those trade routes to 25, which means that no matter what, the max you'll pay for a trade route is only going to be 25, which is great for these expensive ones. And then you can continue that and get better deals, which means that imports are cheaper. So if you end up being an area that's not rich too much in materials, this one isn't super great. We have stone and we have berries. I probably would turn this into more of a trade area, which means that we would focus on commerce. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do trade logistics, and then we'll go better deals. But if you wanted to go down the road of like apples and rye, or getting more growth for sheep herding, that would be another option as well if you don't have a lot here. Now, the apples themselves are grown on home plots, not farms, which means the fertile soil isn't a consideration. So if you want to do like orchids and then vegetables, that's perfectly fine. Then that won't be affected by the fertility of the soil available. Now that we've grown to a pretty decent size with all of these homes are burning firewood, they're getting warm, and we have a winter coming up. Let's increase our gathering of firewood, because we're gonna need so much more. I don't like putting them next to each other because they use the same trees. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and create another one woodcutters over here just by these trees, and then maybe even another one here, just to make sure that we're spreading it out, and we'll chop these trees down to process more firewood. And once again, we've instantly, because we have such a high approval rating, we've instantly filled up on families to our max, so we need to add even more homes because we're growing so aggressively. Now that we've cleared out this whole area of trees, we don't have to worry about cutting down trees for this development. So let's go ahead and add some homes here on this side where the trees aren't, so that we don't have to worry about that, and get even more homes up here ready to go. Now we have some extra cash. Let's also add a horse here to the trading post so that they can move goods a little bit faster and start trading more efficiently. We've got these 3 woodcutters lodges. Since we have so many people, we can start adding them here. We start adding that here. By the way, you wouldn't want this many free families. I'm just showing the progression of this as simply as I can. We've leveled up because we've made another requirement. We got 5 burgers plus level 2. We got another point, and I'm gonna go ahead and do better deals just because we're gonna be doing a lot of trading in this region, so we can keep that moving. All right, now we're feeling pretty good. Our fuel reserves are growing and getting more firewood from that. We have plenty of food. Look at the berry count that we have because we invested in that rich node early on, and we've got tons of extra resources and money. Now let's talk about the feature in the game that we haven't been focusing on early, because it's kind of more in the side of fighting and warring, and we'll talk about in the second half of the video, but that is going to be upgrading into your manor. You need a manor in order to access all of these funds up here in the top right that we haven't talked about. So increasing your treasury, increasing your influence, getting armies and stuff like that. But we've got a good basis for the town now. This is kind of working here. So let's build the manor and talk about the manor. This one is going to require 15 stone, 20 wood planks, and 5 timber. And you want to put it down in a decent area because you can expand a lot. So when I put it down, you see how big this is here. But if you want to, you can add even more to this. And when you do, it's going to expand the resource. You can add towers that shoot at enemies. You can build walls that are like super big, and you can wall off your whole town from the manor, all that kind of stuff. But we're just going to do a basic one here to start. Once the manor is done, you'll hear this huh sound, and a couple things will happen. First off, you'll get a initial bonus of 250 influence, and the influence is what you use to claim new territory. So if you zoom out to the map view and I click on this territory, you can see I need 1,000 influence to lay claim to this territory, so we're going to start expanding. So normally you'd want to get the manor online a little bit sooner than we did here, but I was focusing on the settlement development. So once we have that, we can get into that. Next, what you can do is you can start taxing your people, which converts the regional wealth into your treasury, which you use to hire mercenaries or expand your royal guard of army and start fighting other areas. And the treasury can even be used to expand in other territories as well once the area has been claimed. So you do want to have tithes and land tax in order to start building on your territory, but just keep in mind that the more you tax, people don't like taxes, it's going to lower your approval rating. So you want a pretty high approval rating if you want to start doing it. And all this does is it takes a percentage of your regional wealth and turns it into treasury, which can be used by the Manor Lord so that you can actually start doing things. So when you first start out, you probably want to put this at 10%. If you have a really high approval rating like I do right now, you could probably go even higher. And then you want to take the tithe, which consumes your food and gives it to the church, which converts that food and turns it into influence. You can take over lands, which is why it's so important for us to have so much extra food that we can then give it to the church and everything feels really good. So since we have a good amount, I'm going to set this to 15% to start. All right, a new month has started and you can see that our approval rating went down by a bunch because we're taxing them pretty harshly. So that dropped down, but as long as it's above 51%, you'll still be growing with new population being added all the time. So a percentage of our regional wealth was removed and taxed and was turned into treasury. The treasury is then used for a few different things. First of all, it allows you to buy and hire mercenaries. You can see this value here. You have to have treasury value in order to hire mercenaries this way. And also, if you want to actually expand into a new territory, so if we go to administration, we go to a settler's camp, this can be placed in a new territory that hasn't been settled yet, but you can see that it requires not regional wealth, but actual treasury value. So we need to convert the regional wealth into treasury so we can use it for our expansion desires. But now that we're taxing our people, we need a lot larger amounts of regional wealth to be coming in regularly. Selling off stone in very paltry amounts isn't going to cut it. So we need to find something a little bit more lucrative. So you can see that the export price on these is like 1 or 2, and some of these stay pretty low, but when you start crafting actual items, you can see that these get higher, right? So leather is 6, or you get 4 from malt or iron slabs. And then when you make commodities, those go up even more. If you made cloaks or shoes, they're 8. And then for the military, you can start selling these for even higher as well. So what we want now are we want craftsmen that can take that natural material, convert it into something useful, and then sell that instead. But since every situation is different, every settlement is different, let's take stock of what we have a lot of. We can obviously grab trees, so we can make anything with wood, and that would be super useful. So if we wanted to, we could make war bows, small shields, and large shields. All of these just require wood planks. So we could basically just get another logging camp, get more saw pits, create a lot of wood planks and a lot of timber coming in, and then we can just sell war bows and things like that. That's always an option in every region because every region has trees that you can use. But because we have so many berries coming in, we can also convert those berries into dye, and we can sell the dyes for 4 gold a pop. So let's try that. Let's put down a dyer's workshop. Let's put it near the storehouse and the granary because they're going to be pulling from that anyway. So this will be constructed. We'll convert all of those berries or some of those berries into dyes. We'll eat the rest of them, and then we'll start selling the dye for good money. And while we wait for that to finish, let's go ahead and do what I talked about earlier, the wood option. The wood option is always a great choice for regions that aren't very lush in different areas. So we have tons of wood coming in. Let's go ahead and expand our saw pits here. So we're actually going to get maybe, I like going 3 saw pits if I end up going for a wood crafting region. So all 3 of these will be crafting wood planks entirely. Then we're going to come over here to our level 2 burgage plots, and we're going to get fletchers, which allow us to make war bows. So let's get one of those, and then we'll do a joiner's workshop, and that will allow us to make shields as well. So this will be making shields all the time, and this will make bows all the time. We'll store those away, and we can either use those for our militia, or we can just sell them on the marketplace. Now we've converted this into a joiner's shop and a fletcher's shop. Keep in mind that when you do that, all of the residents in these are converted to artisans completely, and they can't change jobs anymore. So you might see some unassigned families disappear if you convert them into that. And if you click on general, you can see what they're crafting. You can tell them to craft certain things. Let's start with the small shields because they only cost 1 plank. And this family will only be able to make the fletcher or the war bows, but we'll craft that up. And then once we're ready, we can go over here to the trade. Remember, we'll have to buy the trade post or the trade route to sell these. So let's buy the trade route for war bows, and we'll buy the trade route for the small shields. And then since this is a no fighting one, we're going to hit export, and I'm just going to say a maximum of 5 for these on hand. Everything else we sell at 5 gold a pop on the marketplace. place, which can give us a bunch more regional wealth. Now let's talk about the wood industry, because there's a couple things we need to know about this. First, we're gonna have multiple saw pits, and I like putting one family on each just so that they have storage to start building those. I'm gonna put one family on each and keep those here, but you'll notice there's something wrong. Since we started this settlement, we had the logging camp here, which had a bunch of trees around it, but now we're kind of deforesting this area. So if I decide that I'm going to go down the road of having a kind of like woodland or wood style industry in an area, there is a way to generate your own trees. And so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off here with a road. And then what you can do is you can actually let's get another road here. You can create what's called on the construction to the gathering side, you can make foresters' huts. And what these do is, let's make 2 of them. When they're crafted, you can specify an area, and then people that work here will start planting trees. And they take about half a year to grow, but that will keep you constantly generating trees. And I like building it next to the logging camp. Now these are done. What I'm going to do, and unfortunately you have to have someone here basically all year round to get full value out of it. I'm going to put one family on each because we're so good on population. So I'm going to put one family each, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to advanced, and we're going to click on limit work area. That way they're not planting trees over here. I'm going to have one forester hut plant trees here, and I'm going to have the other one advanced limit work area to plant trees here. And then I'm just going to create my own little, like, I don't know, like just mile of trees. I'm going to put a road around it so I know where it is, and put that there. And then we'll put one over here. And that way I know that I'm going to be growing trees here. And you can see they're already digging and planting, and in like 6 to 12 months or so, maybe next year, we'll have a whole bunch of trees growing. And then as the sawmill, the logging camp, starts logging these, they'll constantly be planting new ones, and we'll be growing our own forest all the time, which means we'll have a good source here. If we increase our wood capabilities even more, we can add more forester huts, grow even more trees, and that way as we deforest everything, we don't have to worry too much about losing the trees because we'll have our own supply. A little bit ago we put a family on the dyer's workshop converting berries into dyes, and since we have the dyes, we can go ahead and sell those off as well as commodities. So let's come down here to the dyes, and let's go ahead and get a trade route for that. If it's a good that can be sold without a trade route, they'll occasionally come by, and when they do, you can sell them. However, if you want to make fast money, establishing the trade route means that they'll come by regularly. So let's go ahead and export, and let's keep a minimum of maybe 5 dyes on hand in case we want to go into clothing making. Now we've got industry growing. You see we jumped up to 300 regional wealth, and that's because we have so many of these. We've made a bunch of shields and bows, and these are selling on the marketplace. And while there's still good sales for that, we'll keep that going. But now our biggest problem is that we're going to be using some of our food to create dyes, which means that we need some more sources of food. And we've hit that point where we'll run out of free stalls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off these hitching posts here. So like so. Use the roads to section them off that way. And then we're going to make another market. Since we have so much going on, we've grown so much, we need even more market space for everyone to sell. And I'll just keep it in the same area to keep things simple, but that way there's more room here for more stalls to go up and people to sell their goods. Now we have a couple options for adding food to a region that's kind of tapped out, right? We have people doing the berries. We're kind of maxed out on the animals. We don't have a lot of good farming options for this region. So what we can do is we can take all of these burgage plots that we made, and we can turn them all, since we have good cash flow now, 547 just popped up. We can turn these all into like chicken coops for eggs or vegetable gardens. So I'm gonna go ahead and do chicken coops. So let's make this whole row chicken coops. So let's go chicken coop, chicken coop, chicken coop. And this is going to give us a good steady supply of eggs, which gives us a different kind of food, which keeps people happy and gives us another source of food as well. So all of these are now chicken coops. So regularly we'll be supplying eggs to the market. And maybe add another road as well, just so we can have even more food coming in, because we're going to need it for other things. And we can even increase our tithe from the church so we can have more influence as well. But this gives us a good source of chicken coops. And the chicken coops aren't focused on size like the plots are here. So we have all these being chicken coops. It's going to give us a nice flow of eggs flowing into the market. We have our berries coming in, and we can probably even get more vegetable gardens as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Remember, when it comes to those, the size of the plot is king. So let's go ahead and make some pretty big ones here. What we can do is we can do this. and fill this area. And then we're going to go ahead and decrease the amount of divisions so that we have good, nice size plots for the farmers. So I'm going to go ahead and put this over this way so the farm is facing inward. I'll do 3 of them, good size there, and then we'll convert all of these into vegetable gardens. And what's great about the chicken coop and the vegetable garden and the goat shed, or even the apple orchard, if you have the talent for it, is that it requires just level 1. You don't have to upgrade the burgage plot. It can be level 1, and you get a good source of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish there. So you see you have a bunch of berries coming in, a bunch of eggs from all these chicken coops coming in. We just expanded our vegetables, so now we've got food, we got enough fuel. Everything is looking good for us right now. The next thing we want to do is start upgrading our village again now that we're stable, and we do that by getting 3 level 3 burgage plots, which requires a new kind of requirement. If we go here to this level 2 and then look for this, we need to meet all of these requirements, but there's a church that needs to be leveled up. We need to get 2 different kinds of clothing, and then we also need a tavern that has ale, which is pretty involved. So let's tackle the church first. We'll go to our big churches over here, and you can see that to upgrade it, we need 10 of these roof tiles, these clay roof tiles. So let's go ahead and get those. So if you look at the marketplace, you can see that, decide what those actually are. You can see these are the roof tiles, and these are required to be made with clay. And most areas have usually 1 clay deposit, even if it's kind of small. If you don't have clay available, you can obviously just buy it from the trading post, but we do have one over here. So let's go ahead and make a road from the King's Road all the way over here, so we can do that. And then we're going to go ahead and craft mining pit, and we'll make one off the road here on top. And then once this is done, we can farm up the clay, and then we will need a industry building. So if we go industry to clay furnace, let's put this over here kind of in our crafting section. So once that's done and we pull all this clay out, we'll be able to make those rooftop tiles, and then we can craft up a new church. So let's let that finish. And then the next requirement that we need is we need more clothing for that. And then we also need a tavern. So we can go here and go to the residential area, find the tavern and put it down. But that doesn't solve our problem, because the tavern itself actually needs ale. And that's a 3-step process. You need to take barley, which can only be harvested on farms. Take the barley, and then you need to create an industry building, which is the malt house, which takes barley and converts it into malt. Then the malt needs to be brewed into ale, which can only be done at a building or at a home. So let's take one of these burgers plots level 2, and we'll convert it into a brewery. So I'll make 1, let's make 2 as well, just in case we have the extra. And then we'll start just buying some. Since we're not a farming section, we don't really have a lot of fertile land here, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna buy some barley off the marketplace, and let's just have a stockpile of around 20 or so that we can then put into the malt house, create the malt, and then use the malt at these 2 breweries to create our ale on a regular basis. And then we can then put a family on the tavern, which sells the ale, and that'll satisfy the requirement of these people needing something to drink. We have our clay being harvested here, and we finished our furnace as well. So let's go ahead and put a family here so they can take all that clay, turn it into the rooftop tiles, which will allow us to upgrade the church to level 2. And look at that, just about a year has passed, and these 2 forester huts are starting to yield a forest of trees for us, and we'll keep people assigned here just to keep this moving, since we are kind of building a wood-based economy. And if you need to, you can add another forester hut and expand even more. We've kind of sectioned off this area as a regrowing forest. Now that we've upgraded the church, we've got the tavern going, because the malt house is making malt, which is feeding to the brewers, which are kind of creating their ale. The ale is making its way over to the tavern, and everyone's enjoying the tavern. So you can see all of these are checked except for clothing. So we need a different kind of clothing besides leather. Well, let's solve the clothing problem. So there's a couple different ways you can go about solving this. So you can go ahead and create a tailor's workshop, which allows you to create clothes and cloaks. For this, you need linen and dye in order to create those options. You can also do shoes as well. So let's go ahead and upgrade the shop to a shoes workshop for that. And what's great about the shoes option is it just requires leather. So you actually have a good storage of they just put up a clothing stall over here as well. If you have a good storage of leather, or you have a bunch of goat keeps inside of the homes, you can start creating shoes from the leather. But if you have linen, like say you have a farm town or you're importing a lot of flax, you can create linen, you can create cloaks and clothing that way. And now that we have the tavern flowing with lots of ale, we just added the shoes, which converts the leather over. So now we have leather shoes on the marketplace. Now we can take these level 2 burgage plots with all of these filled out and take them to level 3. This will give us extra family storage, so more living space. It'll give us even more regional wealth every month per family, which is super nice, but all of the requirements will increase. But to get to a large village, we need to get 3 of these, so that's our next goal. And since we've gone the way of hides for shoes, I'm just going to go ahead and convert all of these into goat sheds so we can actually get a good source of hides outside of just hunting. So we can kind of get those going, and then we'll be able to make a bunch of shoes. Which goes to show how important it is to have all of these homes with backyards available. You can still make some that don't for living, but if you have the space, you may as well, so that you can keep getting more functionality out of your villagers. Now, the next thing you want to be careful about is with the trading post, if you oversupply something to the market, the value is going to drop quite a lot. As you can see, the war bows and small shields that we've been selling, the value has dropped from 5 gold a pop to 1 gold a pop because it's oversupplied. And so what you can do is you can stop exporting these, you can still stockpile them, and you can switch over to other things that might make you more money or might be more useful. It'll still bottom out at 1, so if you have no other option, you can still export these and get money out of it, but you might want to cycle and rotate your goods so that you're always getting good value out of the sales. And look at these level 3 burgage plots. Look how big and fancy they are. So cool. They can add their family in there as well, and these will be done. And then you can see that it just adds, they want 4 types of food with all the other requirements still on top of that. So once these are done, we'll get our next upgrade for the large village being upgraded again. So let these finish, and boom, there you go. We've got level 3, so now we've moved up again, and we can get another point into something here, and you can see really how much that goes. Since we want more food, we could invest in orchardry for apples, or we can get honey from beekeeping, which does count as food as an option there. Let's go ahead and do the orchardry. Generally, I like getting these early in the game because you can see that until the trees are fully grown, which takes around 3 years, they produce only a fraction of the yield. So I like getting these. If I know I don't have a lot of options on a certain area, I will get this right at the beginning of the game. And then what you can do is you can actually make like a massive plot. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see, like if this was at the beginning of the game for me, I'm going to make like this huge, gigantic, singular area. So let's make this, let's rotate this like this and make it 1. And I'm gonna make this huge area, and I'll make this an orchard, and this whole backyard area becomes full of apple trees. So if you have no other options for food, or you wanna go down this road in the beginning, you know you're gonna be doing farming, you can pick this up, convert this into an orchard at the beginning of the game, and after 3 years have passed, you'll get super value out of getting tons of apples out of these. And now that we've got a whole bunch of level 3s here, we've got our medium town size acquired, we get another point that we can spend. If we wanted to, we could go for rye. Rye is basically wheat, but it just is easier and more resilient to farm in most areas. So if we wanted to, we could do that. And as your town grows, you'll need to keep adding more livestock, which gets kind of tedious at the stables themselves. You want to add them this way. But so you can add in the livestock trading post, which is under trade. So if you go construction trade, you get the livestock trading post. And just like normal trade, you can specify how many of each animal you want. If you want to get sheep or lambs or mules for trading with other regions. Also, if you have resources that run out, be sure to clean up after them. So we had the clay here. Now that the clay is gone, this mining pit is useless. So we're going to demolish it and get rid of it. And then I also added another logging camp over here. So what we're going to do while we have this is I'm just going to go ahead and create some more nature reserves. So we'll create that. Let's go ahead and do forester, and we'll start growing some new trees over in here right next to the logging camp to get more timber. I also went ahead and made some orchards for you to show you the power of that. Keep in mind, again, you need the orchardry unlock early in the game, and they take about 3 years to come into full fruition. So this is an option for you if you want to get this right at the beginning of the game. It does cost 50 of the regional wealth to get, but as you can see, unlike the vegetable gardens, these can be of any size. You can make these absolutely positively massive, and then you can grow just tons and tons and tons of apples, and after 3 years you'll start getting even more yield from them overall. So it is an option for you, and you can make them as big as you want, so you can think of that as a path. And once you win a round, you can continue in sandbox mode and keep growing as much as you want. But let's look at the other options that you'll get in different regions. So we've started a new game, and check this out. The region that we got is almost all green for fertility. There's just so much we can do here with farming. So this is definitely going to be a farming region. We do have rich on the berry, and we have, that's it, just berries and farming. So let's look at what farming can do for you and what you'd want to do for farming. If you decide that you want a farming region, it's going to take a lot of effort. So keep in mind that on the seasons here, the growth of the crops happens mostly in the summer, and you want to do a lot of planting, plowing, and preparation in the spring, and there's not really anything you can do in the winter. So, and then you harvest around September in autumn time. And so if, like, on your first year, you're planning to do some farming, you want to try and start that as soon as possible because it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to get going. So let's go to construction, go to farming, and we can set out some field areas. Obviously, you want to have the crops that you're trying to place in the right area. So if it were flax, maybe I would want to put it here. If it's wheat, maybe I want to plant it here. And for your first area, you want to look at about 1 or 2 Morgan for your first farm. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to go and I'm going to put this maybe a little bit over this way. This is going to be for my farmhouse. So we can actually just take a farmhouse here and place it here. So it's going to oversee all the crops. You need at least 1 farmhouse in order to start doing crops. Now let's specify some field areas. So let's go ahead and do 3 different fields. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one about this big. You want them to be pretty large so that if you're going to take the time to actually let it grow, you want it to be pretty big so you have a decent yield. So this one's about 2 Morgans. I'm going to make another one here because this one's going to be about the same size, 2.3 Morgans. And the reason you want to have multiple is for different crops, for one. But keep in mind that when you set crops here, this is the yield, the fertility that you have. So this is a good wheat area. So I can set this for wheat right now. But as I grow wheat in this area and then harvest the wheat, the yield of this is going to go down. And so you want to be able to set up crop rotations, which means that you have no yield, no crops being planted in that area, so the soil can regrow and get its nutrients back. You don't really want to be doing anything more than 2 years on and 1 year off. Even better is if you do 1 year on and 2 years off if you want to get the fertility to stay at its highest. So what we could do is we could do crop type rotation here, and we could do wheat off, and then on this one we can do rotation off, no growth, and then wheat. And that way, at one time when this is off, we still have another field that's on, or even better, you can do 3 fields for that. So say we wanted to do another one, we could do another field over here, about the similar size to the other ones, boom, and then we can set this one to crop rotation. This one can be off, wheat off, this one can be wheat off, and this one can be off, wheat. So this is year 2, year 1, year 3, and that way we have 3 fields that are rotating in their growth so that not one field isn't being completely robbed of all its nutrients. Now, when you click on a field for farming, you'll be able to see the process that it goes through when it's actually set up. So this one is set to do wheat right now. First, we have to plow the whole field. Then we have to sow to plant the seeds. Then the crop grows, and then we can harvest. And this takes a good 4 to 8 months, depending on the crop. So we want to put in the time to do it early in spring so that by the time it hits September, when you actually get to harvest it, then you're actually able to get some crops out of that. And again, I recommend getting on a rotation here so you don't over reap the land. But this is where we're at right now. So let's start working on the wheat. In order for anyone to plow the fields, there needs to be a nearby farmhouse and we need to put people in it. So let's stock it up with some farmers and they're going to go run out to the fields and start plowing it. Once this gets fully plowed, it has to be completely 100% plowed. Then they'll be able to put the seeds. And I'm on 12 times speed right now, and they'll be able to just get through it this way. Now you can speed this up by unlocking the unlock here, which is heavy plow. So if you get this unlocked, you can go to the farmhouse and you can get the upgrade, and then you can dedicate a ox to the farmhouse, which will come out and speed up plowing. So this first section here, and it'll speed up the harvesting. It does nothing for sowing and nothing for growth, but it will speed up the plowing and it will speed up the harvesting process, which will allow you to completely plow this whole field using the ox, and then it won't actually collect, it won't like uproot the crop, but once it's set up, you'll be able to grab it with the ox and walk a large amount of it back to the farmhouse. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's assign a ox here for this field to keep this moving. They're going to bring the ox out and it's going to plow so much faster than a normal person actually could. And I like having these roads on the outside. It helps the ox actually move through, but you can see they're going to plow way faster than a person person would, but you do have to have the talent point spent in that region. You have to spend the timber to get the upgrade, and then you also have to dedicate an ox to only that as a main focus. So you can see this one field is being worked on by a person with an ox, and then I have the other farmers working here on this flax field that I just put out. Flax can be converted into a linen so we can make clothes, which helps us a lot in growing the settlement, but we're going to have this here, and then I have these two on the flax for off. Then once it's plowed, the farmers can come in and plant seeds, and you'll see that progress filling up here, and as soon as the seed goes down, it starts growing. So you can just get this crop in here, and again, you want this done in the spring so it has time to grow in the summer, and then you can harvest it in the fall. Then as time goes on, the crop will grow, and by around September time, you'll be able to harvest the crop, which you want to have all hands on deck. You'll notice that the farmhouse has a max of 8 families that can be working, so you get a lot of people putting in time. It's a very heavy investment to do farming, but it's super worth it. If you have over your crops here in the top right, you'll see how long it is until the crops that are growing can be harvested and about how much you can expect to get. And this can help you look at your yields. And again, you can see that this has already gone down to 49%, while this is still 60. So even just using this field for one single season is dropping it by 10 to 20% in the fertility. So that's why we rotate between fields. Then around September, it's harvest time. So all the farmers will come out, they'll pull up the crops and put them in these piles. And these piles is where the ox can come in and grab a large amount of it and move it back to the farmhouse. So you want to get this harvest done, and you want to get this before winter hits, because once winter hits, these crops may die or disappear or can't be harvested anymore. So you want to have all hands on deck to grab this and make sure these crops get put away before the winter comes. And if there's time left over, September, October, November, they'll start plowing the field again for the next time it gets used if they grab up all of the crops. Next, depending on the crop, you'll start being able to process it. So if you have barley out on these fields, so if we go here and we have this, if you have barley, you'll be able to turn it into malt and then into ale. If you have flax, you'll be able to convert it into linen. But if you have wheat, there's a multi-step process that needs to happen. The wheat comes back to the farmhouse first. Then when the farmers have free time, they'll have to come back to the farmhouse and thresh it. So it's all stored in here in this building. They'll have to come back and thresh it. If you want them to have a high priority for threshing, you can come up and set this priority to higher. Instead of working the fields, they'll come back and thresh the wheat, which turns it into grain. Once it's grain, you'll need to build up yourself a windmill. This windmill itself will have the opportunity to, you want to put it in an open area, but once the windmill's up, you'll be able to take the grain from the farmhouse and turn it into flour. And then from the flour, you'll want to get a bakery, which is a communal oven, set this down, and they'll take the flour from here, put it in the bakery, and this is how you make bread, which is one of the best food items in the game. And as the season rolls over, since we're on a schedule here, it's going to move up by 1 year. They'll move to a new field, let this field regrow and get its fertility back, and they'll start moving on to others as they collect new crops. That covers basically everything you need to have a successful settlement outside of the combat. Now, based on the resources available, I would choose to either go the farming route if you have fertile lands. I would also, if you have high mineral deposits, go charcoal burning into deep mining, and you can sell the charcoal until you get infinite iron or infinite clay. Keep in mind that deep mining does not work on stone. It's only on iron and clay. Or if you want to, you can go for a hunter-gatherer type with forest management, trapping, getting extra skins and extra meat, and you can even go for honey and wax later on as an option as well. But it all depends on what you have available. If you have, like on this save, I have decent fertility, let's go for farming. If you have red, but you have like a good berry and animal deposit, maybe you want to go hunter-gatherer, sell hides, keep lots of berries, make dyes and sell the dyes. If not, if you have a good mineral deposit of clay or iron, maybe you want to go for charcoal, sell the charcoal until you can get infinite clay. This one, by the way, is super useful to deep mine. It allows you to have infinite, if it's a rich deposit of clay or iron, you can make it so it never runs out, which means that region can infinitely farm clay or iron, and that becomes your biggest export. And now we've got a steady, regular supply of flax for making clothing to make our people happy or for selling, and we got regular, steady supply of wheat for making bread. That bread's gonna be super valuable and keep our people fed and keep some good variety and everything going on, and that's just gonna be awesome. So farming is definitely super useful. You just have to put a lot of effort into it, and you have to have a land that actually supports it. Now for the long-awaited second part of this video. Once you graduate from Rise to Prosperity, or maybe you just want to stick around here, if you decide you want to try the more warring modes, you have Restoring the Peace and On the Edge. Restoring the Peace is more about total conquering the world, total domination, and on the edge is just being attacked constantly. And with these modes, you're going to have bandits that steal things from you constantly. You'll have raiders that raid your encampment all the time, and you'll have other barons and kings that will fight you for territory that you'll have to face off with as well, which means that on top of growing your settlement, you'll also have to be building up your army and your militia, which you can only really do once you've got a really good understanding of the basics of making your settlement work properly, because then you can start mixing in getting things done on the warring side. Down at the bottom, if you press V or go to army, you'll have the ability to add in new units. And you have two different choices here. You can make the units out of the people in your town, which means you can make a new militia. So you add a militia here, you'll have to equip them with your own gear, and your own people will have to go out and fight for you, or you can hire mercenaries. Mercenaries tend to be a little bit faster online. You can use the treasury income to buy them, and then this amount gets charged by you every single month that you have them in your employ, but it doesn't risk your villagers, and you don't have to equip them yourself. Now, when you hire a mercenary group, they will arrive in a certain region, and you want to pay attention to that. So you can see that the flock of crazy geese and the local thugs will arrive in Hofstetten, while the wayward sons will arrive in Emmenruth. So you want to go to the map and see where that is. If you look here, you can see that Emmenruth is in the bottom left, and then Hofstetten is up here in the top right. So if I were here in the middle, I might want to get the ones that arrive here if I'm about to be attacked, so that it takes less time for them to get across from the outside of the map into my territory to defend it. So let's see what that might look like. If we create and go to hire mercenaries, let's get the ones that arrive in Emmenruth. I'm going to use the treasury amount to hire these guys, sign the contract, and now they will appear here in the bottom left. So these are now my units as long as I pay them. You have a couple options for moving them, but keep in mind that if you are about to be attacked, you want to give some lead time for these guys to be able to travel from where they come in to your base, right? They're going to have to walk their way over. Now, you can use the run to positions option. When you turn this on, you will be able to make them run. They'll use up their fatigue meter more, which means that when they arrive, they'll be less useful, but it does mean that they get there faster. So if you buy them ahead of time, in time before you get attacked, you can have them run over to your land, and then you can just have them chill in place, like have them stay here and wait to get their fatigue meter back so they're more effective at fighting. Like many of these strategy games, you can click to have them move, or you can hold right click and drag to have your units positioned in a certain way. So maybe we take the melee units, we have them place here, and we take the range units and we have them stand further behind, and the more organized and the more armed they are, the more effective they will be. You'll see the effectiveness of your unit squad here listed underneath the pop-up for them. And you'll also get to see the bonuses that they get for cohesion, negative for fatigue. So you can see these guys ran here, so they're kind of waiting for that fatigue to come off and wear off so they get their energy back. And we have another group of brigands here coming. You can see that they're a little more spread out. They're not as organized, so they're not going to be as strong as the ones that we paid more money for. For ranged units, they don't really do much up close, but if they sit from farther away, they can be super devastating. You can have them fire in volleys, you can have them fire at will, and you can even have them fire into groups where two enemies or enemies and friendlies are fighting, especially if they're mercenaries. You don't care about them living, you're going to disband them at the end of the month anyway. You can have them fire directly into that, but you want to have a good mix of both, because if you have too many melee, they'll get mowed down by enemy ranged, and if you have too many ranged and the melee get in range, then they're not going to be very useful at all. If you know a unit is going to be attacked from range, you can have them spread out, which gives more distance around them. It means they're going to be less effective at fighting in melee, but it means that when they're being shot at, they're going to be hit less. And you can also have them take cover as well if they're a melee unit. So if you see here, you have missile alert, you can have them kind of brace for missiles. This will tell them to just try and dodge or use their shields or duck behind or look above and try to avoid getting hit. So if we have these guys come together a little bit and we can have them move over, if they're organized enough, we can have them do missile alert, which will focus them on avoiding missiles at all costs. You can also have them give ground, which means that as they're being attacked, they'll do as much damage as they can, but fall back. So if you're fighting on the edge of your territory, you can have them fall back that way. You can have them stand their ground, which means that they're going to focus more on defense and have less offensive power, but maybe they live longer. Or you can have them push forward, which makes them attack more and try to gain ground as they're pushing forward. Now, the other option is to have your own militia, and this is far more efficient in the usage of money, because you won't have to spend money on the brigands every single month, but it does cost your civilians, and you will have to arm them yourself. So if you want to get them together, you'll have to put up enough of these guys in here. And in order for a militia to mobilize, they need at least 5 units that are armed and ready to go. You create these weapons and gear using your homes, right? So we can upgrade them. We can have Fletchers that create war bows. In order to do the armorer's workshop, you will need to get the armorer's upgrade and eventually go into advanced armor making and master armor making if you want to do that. But you can also make general armor using the tailor's workshop, making gambesons, which is decent armor for your characters as well. And then you also want to arm them with shields. Joiner's workshop will create shields, and then the blacksmith workshop will create spears and side arms. When you're making militia, the war bows are used by the archer militia. You can make halberds for the polearm militia, spears for the spear militia, and then for the militia footmen, you need the sidearms, which is created here by the blacksmith, or you need the sidearms, and then you need small shields, or you need spears and large shields for the spearmen. If you're going war bows and spears, you want to make sure you have a saw pit that's making planks often, because you will be using planks to create those, and then you need a good source of iron. Once you have the iron from a mining pit, you can go to industry, and you can create bloomery, which will allow you to convert that iron into iron slabs, which can be used for weapons. Now that we have enough weapons and gear for them, at least 5 of them are geared up, we can then rally them, which will bring them out as civilians to the field. You can have them rally and move forward. And it depends on how many are available and how many can get gear and weapons to do what they're going to do. So as long as your industry is building up, you'll be able to make your own army that way. And once you disband these units, they'll just go back to their lives that they were living before, and you can just keep calling on them and moving them forward. The big difference here is that if you have brigands or mercenaries that die, you will want to use a corpse pit to bury them. This is just for general usage. But if they are civilians or villagers that die, you'll want to use the church to do that. So make sure you just assign someone to the church. They'll make a special graveyard for them, and you can use them that way. So if you don't care about them, make a corpse pit and just put them in a hole. If you do care about them and their villagers, you'll be better off putting them inside of the church. And lastly, once you've got all of that mastered, it's time to start taking territories. Where you go depends on the mode you're playing and where the resources are that you're looking for. Maybe you want to build an iron deposit, you want to do some gathering, you got some other things here. Once you have enough influence saved up from giving food to the church or by winning battles in combat, you can go to and you can claim with influence on this territory here, and later on, once they add this functionality, the king's favor will be there as well. Then once you have the territory claimed, if you're playing the mode where you play against other barons, they can contest the territory. You'll have to fight a battle over it. If not, then you can just go over to administration, take a settler's camp, which takes some treasury, and place it down in the new area. And then you'll be able to change between these. It'll be a new whole skill tree. It'll be a brand new area with brand new people that you can build, and you just start from scratch. And then once you have a different zone that you want to trade with, go to trade, and you can go to logistics and set up a pack station. And this is how you will trade between regions. Once this is built, you'll be able to specify a region. So if you own another region, right now we don't own any regions, but if we own another region, you'll have to supply it with a mule, and then select the region and then say what you're going to give and what you want to receive. And you'll be able to trade between regions that way and just give the materials. So you have like a farming region that wants to sell flax, or you want to sell grain, and they'll be able to barter with them if they have a different resource that you want available. And eventually, as you take over the map, you'll be able to connect these all with the bartering stations. And that is the world of Manor Lords. You can also, if you want to, you can click on this visit mode where you can visit your encampments, your settlements, to kind of look around and see them in third person. But that's everything that I can think to cover. This video got way longer than I thought it was supposed to be, but hopefully this covered it for you. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.